Otherwise we can put in the center this space, no? Yeah. All right. Yeah. We didn't die in the break, so that's good. It's a Buddhist joke, you know? Yeah, if you wake up and say, "Oh, I didn't die." Yeah, it's kind of a way to build more awareness, no, regarding the death process, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So before we start, just to recall motivation. Yeah, that we're doing this session in order to understand more about the death process, but even more important, to transform our minds, right? To use the opportunity we have right now. Yeah. So that's kind of should be the motivation, or try at least. Yeah. Yeah, so I forgot to mention in the morning that we also have Q&A sessions, right? So maybe just before lunch we can do a Q&A, and then towards the end of the day, you know, we can do a Q&A. Yeah, if there's any questions, then we will address them and try to see if there's answers, you know. So, yeah, so this morning we talked about various aspects of death and why we can see it as a very positive thing, in the sense of more awareness of that helps us to use our precious opportunity, or you could say, for the Buddhist practitioners, presume rebirth, and those who are more secular inclined, then just to use their life in a more beneficial way, right? Yeah, because death is going to happen, and then, yeah, things can happen. Yeah, how should I say that? So then it's important, leading up to the afternoon session, that when you think that if that is the end, then we can close Jamyang, basically, more or less, because we're mainly interested in development. Yeah? Development of mind is not easy, and it takes time, and we often say it takes lifetimes. Yeah, so that's a very important aspect of the death and dying processes we touched upon a little bit this morning. But what happens then, you know, if you die? That's something quite of interest, because if you know there is something after this life, then it helps to not have the fear, or for the unknown. Yeah, many people, that's one of the fears they have. So yeah, if you that's in Buddhism, we're very open-minded. You know, if you we respect any form of religion or faith, because Buddhism is not the perfect match for everybody. That's quite clear. Yeah, Buddhism is not the best kind of way of life for everybody. That's clear. Yeah, so that's why we have many forms of interest, many forms of religions or forms of faith, and that's why we respect that. Yeah, because any form of faith or religion has benefit to a particular group of people in society, right? Yeah. When I was giving in the early days, in India, I spent more than two decades in India, and mainly in South India, nice weather. But sometimes I went to the north in a place called Dharamshala, and there's a center called Tushita, and there you have various courses, and I did a few there, also introduction courses to these kind of things. 10 days, they have this kind of, you get some taste of the Buddhist Path and the principles of it. And there are people from all kind of different religions and backgrounds, and then one person was very critical during the course, asking questions and like, really, you know? So I like that, because people are thinking, right? People are thinking, that's good. So he asked a lot of questions and was quite critical. And then in the end of the course, he came up to me and said, "Thank you so much," he said. "I understand my own religion now much better." I said, "Oh, great. My job is done," right? Because that's true, right? Buddhism is an aspect of understanding the mind better, and whatever form of faith you follow, if that helps you develop yourself, then that's important, right? Yeah. So that's good to know, right? That Buddhism, we don't like converting people into Buddhism or any form of faith or religion. That's not very healthy. You know, people have to, from their own side, check what's beneficial for their mind and follow that path, right? Yeah. But in Buddhism and also other forms of faith, they always think there is something after, right? Yeah. So after life, if it's going to heaven or hell, or going in the next rebirth, there's most religious forms of, lifestyles or faith. They always have something that happens after that. Yeah. And the science we talked about already a little bit. We talked about the science of the near-death experience, right? So that's the near-death experience. If you're really interested in what happens after death from a scientific point of view, then the near-death experience is one of the most interesting phenomena we can research, because it's mostly in a very controlled environment. Yeah? Especially when it's researched in an operation theater, when the person is being measured, heartbeat, lung function, brain activity. It's all not on paper, but the data is all there, right? So that's very interesting. So that's I think the most important and the most solid evidence we see of a consciousness that is having a valid perception and see things that can be remembered and see things that are valid. That is, according to the current medical science, not possible. Yeah? So that's very interesting. That the brain is dead, but the person has perceptions. Yeah, there's many case studies. If you look in the case studies and you look at the data, that it's not just random hallucinations or something like that. It's very structured, as I said already. And then whatever research you depend upon, if it's Bruce Grayson or Pim van Lommel or others, then it's between 84 and 93% what people perceive at the time of an out-of-the-body experience, during a cardiac arrest, for example, when there's a clinically dead, person clinically dead. 84 to 93% what people perceive seems to be valid. Meaning a person knows where the nurse, because when they put CPR or something, they take off your glasses or your dentist and they put them somewhere, right? And sometimes there's a bit of panic and quick, get a person into the operation theater, and then the nurse sometimes forget where she put the dentist or the glasses. And then it happens sometimes that the patient goes to the ward and comes, and is back to life and goes to the ward and then says to the nurse, "You know where my glasses are. You put them in that drawer." And then the nurse said, "How do you know? You were dead." It's very interesting that there are perceptions. They seem to be valid, right? So that's very interesting science, because what we measure is there's no measurable brain activity at that time, right? Yeah. And then what people experience, we're going to talk about later. Yeah. In the afternoon, we're going to talk about what happens exactly, what are the stages, what you see when you die. Yeah. So that means at that time, there is consciousness without a physical brain. I mean, there's a physical brain there, but there's no brain activity as such, as we can measure at the moment. It's a very interesting phenomena, right? And then there's also very interesting aspects of Stevenson research. Stevenson is one of the professors. He passed away a few years ago. One of the professors of the University of Virginia, and he did kind of 40 years research of 2,000 cases of children remembering previous lifetimes. And not just the subjective experience of remembering previous lifetimes, but also a birthmark combined with a birthmark of the cause of death of the previous personality, which statistically, if you put some statistics to this kind of data, is very, very solid evidence of the cause of a birthmark of the previous personality. For example, in a previous lifetime, mostly in those cases, then there's instant death. Yeah, either an accident or being murdered or things like that. All of a sudden there's death. If you have all of a sudden a death process setting in, then there's a higher chance to remember. Yeah, there's many reasons for that in Buddhist scriptures as well. That because if you normally die and go slow, then when you get sick, all the because everything degenerates slowly, right? And then it's very difficult to remember things. But if it goes like that, then it's easy to remember. So most cases you will see, if you study that it's instant death. Yeah? And then it's so interesting that if you look at the police reports of the previous personality, yeah, with the cause of death, there can be a shot wound or other wounds or whatsoever, then in certain cases there's a birthmark in accordance with the cause of death. Which is, you think, how is that possible? There's all kind of explanations for that in the Buddhist scriptures as well, but from the point of view of just the science, it's very interesting that you have a child, mostly between 4 and 7 years old. They remember, and after 7, then they start forgetting because this life becomes more important for them, right? Yeah. But then in that age, in that period, they remember, and sometimes it's not just names, but whole areas, descriptions of houses and villages and people, and that can be validated, right? You can go there, you can talk with people, and you get that information, and then you validate that, and then you see the cause of death of the birthmark, and it's very interesting science. But for us, what most interesting is how habituation patterns carry from the previous personality to the present. That's for us very interesting. So what Stevenson is saying, he says, I'm not trying to prove reincarnation. I just have to state that there is something that carries information from the previous personality to the present. Yeah, which is just remembering things, of the past, remembering things of previous lifetimes. So think, how is that possible? I don't remember my previous lifetime. Yeah, it's true, right? But we also don't remember what you did. I'm doing many times. Today is 20. What is it? 26? Yeah. What did you do on 26th of October, 1994? At 13 past 12. Yeah, it's quite difficult for us to remember, right? But that doesn't mean that event didn't happen. That event happened, but we cannot remember, But there are people who can remember. And that's very interesting science. That there are people who can remember, and we call that phenomena hyperdementia. Yeah, that's very interesting science. That you see there are people, you give them a date and they just remember. It's not many people, but there are people like that. It's very interesting science. Yeah. So that means that information is not lost. That information can be remembered. In a similar way, previous lifetimes, that information is not lost, and that can be remembered by certain individuals, especially when they're young, often, or when they're older and get some accomplishments in meditation. Then it's a different story, right? So that's very interesting. But what I'm saying is those children, they remember, and if you're interested, you can look at Stevenson's research or his student, Jim Tucker. Yeah, Jim Tucker wrote a few popular books on this topic, and Life Before Life is one famous, kind of books. Or if you don't like to read, you can look on YouTube or what is it called, Netflix, and there is a series called Surviving Death. Yeah, it's very popular. I don't. Those documentaries are nice, but they're just made for a more popular audience. So the science behind it is not that clear, but you can get an idea. Yeah, so this is beyond cultures. Yeah, there's not only in cultures who believe in reincarnation. No, also there's many cases in the U.S. People not really believing in any religion, but the child just remembers previous lifetimes, right? A deeper lifetime. Yeah. So yeah, Surviving Death, that series, very interesting. In great detail, they remember, and also the habituation patterns of the previous personality carry on. Yeah, sometimes they're afraid again because they have nightmares about the accident they were in the previous lifetime, for example. Very interesting. But what even more interesting is how habituation patterns from the previous life carry on in the next. And that's, for us, extremely of great interest. Because if that's the case, if there is really a continuity of consciousness that carries on over lifetimes, and not only carries on over lifetimes, if its habituation patterns are been, how would I say that, repeated, then that's very interesting. Because if we then generate a positive kind of direction in our thinking, in our way of thinking, then that carries on in the next life, right? And that's very interesting for us to look into that. And yeah, in these case studies, if you study the case studies of Stevenson, there's some case studies, books published by the University of Virginia, which is very interesting material. Then you can see that sometimes the habituation patterns carry on in the next life. There's one case in Burma, I mentioned that already, people who know me longer, they know the story already, but it's just very striking. That a person was killed by soldiers in Burma, was reborn, and the local community had a good relation with the soldiers, but the boy was always angry at the soldiers and always throwing stones at the soldiers. And then he had a birthmark of the cause of death. He remembered also things of the previous lifetime that was all being validated. And then, believe it or not, he met the person he was married to in his previous lifetime. Although she was a bit older, they married again. It's very interesting, right? So then you see how habituation patterns carry on. Yeah, that's very interesting. There's more interesting stories, but yeah, it's for time being enough. So that's for us, leading up to the afternoon session, that we have to prepare ourselves not only for that, but also for the next life. That's kind of an important Buddhist aspect. Yeah, and if there's a future lifetime, then it might be wise to look into that, right? To see if that's coming. From the Buddhist perspective, we say this life is very short. Maybe 80 years if you're lucky, or 90, or 100 for some, But that's it. But next lifetimes, times, plural, they're much longer in duration, right? So then you might think, oh, maybe I should think about it and invest in the long-term development. Anyway, there's just a few aspects, yeah. Okay, we're still in this life. Yeah, but leading up to the afternoon, then we're going to talk about it a bit more. So, to prepare us for that in this life, then first of all, we have to be aware. Yeah, we have to recognize it's coming, as we did this morning with the meditation of that death is definite, right? We cannot escape it, as we saw. It's getting closer rather than further away, and it's not gonna wait till you finish something. Yeah. So that we're going to die, most of us have quite an understanding of that we are going to die, right? So the second point we normally contemplate is the time is very uncertain. Yeah, we always think, oh, I won't die tomorrow, or I won't die this year, or I won't die until I have my pension, or something like that. Yeah, we think like that, right? Yeah, my father, same thing. He just had pension, I think, for a year, and that's it. Yeah. So that happens, right? So that means that we grasp to this permanent aspect of life and think it's not going to happen to us, right? But people who are dying, they sometimes still think it's not going to happen, Same with my father. The cancer was so much spread in the lungs and different parts of the body. Then chemo didn't really probably do much, but still, my father still wanted to do it to extend the period, right? Yeah. So then you see that we still always grasp to, it's not going to happen, We still think. Even people who go and die tonight, they still don't think they're going to die. Yeah. We also don't think we're going to get a heart attack. We also think we don't get cancer. And we also think we don't get the stroke or things like that. But people who got a heart attack or a stroke or cancer, they thought exactly the same thing, right? So that's kind of a reality we have to face, that it's going to happen. Either of those things, or an accident, or just sickness, or just old age, and that's it, right? So that's kind of a reality. The more you can deal with that reality, the more you are prepared when that reality comes, right? So that's very important. Why is that very important? Because acceptance is so crucial. If you have an issue, if it's mental, if it's physical, or if it's a sickness, incurable, or pain, if you have acceptance of it, it's so much easier to deal with it. Yeah? So that's kind of very important. Because if you don't have that acceptance, then you always want to escape it, you know. And then sometimes that's not possible, right? Yeah, so same with old age and death, that you cannot escape it, as we saw this morning already in the first aspect of the meditation, right? So the acceptance is very important, that it's going to happen, right? And not just going to happen, it can happen any moment, yeah? And then you're ready when it happens, yeah? So in Tibetan, there's a saying in the meditation techniques on death and impermanence, kashin trishin shivas, means without regret, just completely pleased and happy with it, and just go with the flow and die, you know. It's a very interesting, because if you die in that way, that's much better than dying in a way that you want to hold on, right? So that's kind of letting go and not being attached to things in this life, we will come up in the afternoon, is very important. Yeah, that you want to detach and just let go, right? That's very important. Yeah. So that brings us to the point that it can happen anytime. Yeah. So that's the second meditation we have, that next to seeing that death is definite, we all more or less agree upon that, but that the time is uncertain. That's for us a more difficult point, right? We always think, I'm not going to die today or tomorrow or this year or the coming 5 years or something like that, you know. Yeah, you go to the doctor and they check your cholesterol and sugar levels and things like that, and then your body weight and your length, and there's this kind of, how to say, they calculate the percentages of you getting a heart attack and stroke and things like that. You can do that, you know. So then you say, oh, only a few percent. Okay, then I won't die. Yeah, in the coming 5 years, right? But there's other ways to die as well. You know, it doesn't have to come from a stroke or a heart attack or things like that, right? Yeah. So that means that the time, that's for us important. Because if you contemplate not only that you are going to die, but also when you understand that the time of death is uncertain, you will use this opportunity you have right now. You will use every moment of your life. Yeah, so the previous meditation we did this morning is to motivate us in general. Okay, we're going to die, and better use this opportunity we have. Now I have still a healthy body, I still have a healthy mind. Better use this now before it's too late, right? That's what we did a little bit this morning. The meditation we do in this session should be focused upon, I have to start right now. Why do we have to start right now? Because that can happen any moment. Yeah, you can just, some people, they fall and die, or you know, it's very easy to die, you know. So that means that we have to contemplate that aspect. The time is very uncertain. Yeah. So why is the time uncertain? Because on the planet we're living at the moment, there's no guarantee. When you're born, is no guarantee. Okay, you get 80 years. Okay, you get 90 years. Don't worry, you can become 90. Don't worry about that. That's not true, right? If you're born, then it doesn't guarantee. Nobody gets the guarantee of a life. They might say, okay, healthy baby, but that doesn't imply anything. There's no certainty, right? Yeah. So that means that the time of death is very uncertain, because the first reason is that nobody gets a guarantee on this planet of you're going to live this long, right? Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's some people die young, some people die before their parents, some people die as a teenager, some people die at birth, right? So there is no guarantee. Yeah, so that the time is very uncertain with that regards. Yeah, that's the first point. The second point is that there are so many causes and conditions that causes death than that actually sustains life. Yeah, we know that from medications, for example, they help from one point of a sickness, but on the other side, there's side effects, you know. So that's very clear. Even with food, if you have allergies to certain foods, then it's not sustaining life anymore. It's creating a cause for suffering or death even, right? Yeah. So we had one case of a monk in the monastery, and I had to translate with an American doctor who worked for many years in the settlement, Tibetan refugee camps, you know. And he asked me to translate, and it was a very, very sad situation. One monk had TB, kidneys were failing, and his liver function was not good. And then the doctor said, if I give him medicine for TB, then his kidneys and his liver goes, and what do I do, you know? So that means that at a certain time, then even medication creates side effects and causes other complications, right? So there are so many causes that actually causes death, or just a virus, or cancer, or heart attacks, or strokes, or food, too fatty food, high cholesterol, and that causes problems and things like that, you know. So that means there are so many, or accidents, you know. There's so many causes that actually can cause death than actually sustaining life. Yeah, that's the second point. And then the third point is, as we just read this morning in one of the prayers, is that our body is like a water bubble. You know, they think, yeah, no, look at this, it's all there. You know, it looks like that, but it's, if you really analyze, that's what my mother always says. She said, when I wake up, she says, she's 80 something now, she's quite healthy still. I went twice this year. One day we went for, a few days we went for cycling and everything. With electric hop, you know, you cycle, but you have a little bit of kaza, how do you call that? Help with the electric motor. And I was making a photo because I didn't go to Netherlands, so I had to send a photo of a windmill to my friends. So yeah, so I did. I normally don't take photographs, but I thought I'd do that at that time. So I did that, and then my mom was already waiting. I'm not waiting for you, because I borrowed one of her friend. But you know, there's this electric thing, and on the turbo, you know, it goes very fast. Yeah, we have to be careful. Yeah, but so then, yeah, my mom then she says sometimes, she said, when I wake up, she said, it's a miracle, it's all working. It's true, right? That our body is a very complex machine, right? If you see all the organs that work together, it's a very complex. Then we normally don't really think about it. Yeah, I put food inside and drink and breathe. We do that automatically. The heart does its job day and night, you know. But if you really analyze the different organs that are involved in the process, it's very complex, right? It's very easy. For one little complication, the whole system collapses, right? That's very clear. That our body is, or when you fall, for example, it's very easy. You just have to fall like this. You don't have to fall off a high building or something. You just fall like that on the road, and you just have to knock your head somewhere, and you can get complications, right? So very, very fragile, you know. That's it's very easy to die, so to say, you know. That the body is, yeah, is just a miracle. It's all working, and it's very easy to get one organ, as I told my friend, this monk who had different kind of sicknesses, and then organs failing, and then you cannot do anything anymore, right? So that means that the body is very fragile, you know. It's very easy to get, especially the older you get, the less kind of resistance you have to sicknesses and things like that, right? So the older you get, the more fragile the body becomes. You have to just be careful of walking and doing things, because your balance is maybe not that good anymore, and healing process of breaking bones is much slower, right? So you just have to be careful, right? So that implies that, you know, it's very easy to get complications with a little thing, and then the whole thing collapses. You know? So that's that the body is fragile. So there are the three reasons to see that the time is very uncertain. Yeah, so that we don't have a guarantee in our life of when you're born, you get this amount of lifespan. There's no there, and then the second point is that. There's so many causes that causes death rather than that sustains life. Yeah, even medication sometimes have side effects, right? And our body is like this water bubble, right? It's very easy to get complications and have a sickness and infections, and we saw that during pandemic, right? We so much grasp to permanence, and then I overheard one. There was during the pandemic. I don't know if the person was dying or something here behind. The ambulance came and things like that, and the lady said, "Oh, you cannot leave now. You cannot leave now. You cannot leave now." So we so grasp to permanence, right? Yeah, so, and that's so strong in our mind that we're not really aware of the impermanent nature of reality. And we saw that very clearly with the pandemic. Yeah, many people thought, oh, that can't be true, that's not true, it's not true. For me, same thing. I was in eastern Nepal. I was in retreats for a few weeks without internet access. And before that, there were a few cases in China and things like that. But you thought, okay, no big deal, you know. So yeah, a retreat, and it came out of retreat, and the whole world was upside down, right? Yeah. So I thought, I have to go back to India. What? Borders closed? Well, how is that possible? Yeah, because we grasp to permanence, right? So I was thinking going back to India, but the borders were closed. Well, how is that possible? Because we grasp to permanence, you know. And then luckily, I just got the last flight out of Kathmandu to London. But that's with the pandemic was a very good lesson for, I think, most of us to see that we always think we have things in control. We have our health in control. We have the world in control. Nothing will happen. But it's completely wrong, because that's not a reality, right? And then if you hold on to that permanence, then it's very difficult to deal with something like a pandemic, because you're not prepared. In a similar way, if you never think about death and dying, then when it happens, you're not prepared, and then it's just more difficult to deal with it. Yeah? I explained an example of my mother already, and that's quite clear, that now developments with Death Cafe and conversations around death is just very healthy, because then you understand and you prepare. And then you're ready to face that reality, because you're going to face that reality. That's true for everybody, young, old, middle-aged. Everybody is going to face that reality, right? That we have that all in common. Yeah. So then the better is to prepare you for that, and while you're preparing, then try to use the life we still have. And that's why we do the second meditation of contemplating that the time is uncertain. And why do we do that? In order to motivate ourselves to take the essence out of a precious rebirth, or you could say to realize that it's time right now to do something with our lives in a more constructive way, or, you know, make our life of more meaning. Yeah, So more meaning. Then you can ask the question. I asked the question before I became a Buddhist, when I was raving in Rotterdam, and then sometimes with and sometimes without drugs. And then sometimes you think, what's the meaning of life? Because it's very popular, right, on the hippie scene, and you talk about it, think about it. But then if you think more, then you really think, what actually is the meaning of life? If you really think clearly, then it looks like that wanting happiness and not wanting suffering makes sense. That we all strive for happiness and don't want suffering, right? Yeah, so that's actually the purpose in life, in general. Right? So how do we accomplish that? That's the question. Yeah? So we have to look for methods to transform our mind and to motivate ourselves for that purpose or for that meaning of life. That's why we try to contemplate that death is coming, and not just that it's coming, but also it can happen any moment. And then we like to use the opportunity we have right now and transform our mind and become a happy human being. Right? That's actually... and then in the more extensive or broader mindsets, then you think about lifetimes, right? We're going to talk about that more in the afternoon. So let's do a short meditation then on that the time is uncertain, right? To motivate ourselves that is going to happen, and to build more awareness, first of all, with that in general, but even more specific, to recognize that it's going to happen, and it can happen any moment. Yeah, and then use that insight to use our life in a constructive way. Yeah, so that's the purpose of this meditation, right? Not to generate fear. No, the purpose of this meditation is to have more awareness of that we're ready for it and we have acceptance for it. On top of that, also to use the opportunity we have, right? Yeah. So that we do the same kind of structure as we did in the previous meditation, but now we add the counting of the breath. Yeah, so counting of the breath helps us to get focused and have an object of concentration and concentrate. Because at the time of death, it's also important to let your mind decide what to think or to direct your mind. And for that purpose, you need a certain amount of concentration, right? So what we do first is just same as in this morning, just observe your breath, yeah, either the movement of your chest or the air in your nostrils, and then we move to the count of the breath. You count every in-breath as 1, out-breath as 2, and you count from 1 to 10, and then start over counting. Yeah, that's the concentration meditation. And after that, we will do the analytical meditation, right? The time is very uncertain. Yeah, so let's do that for a few minutes. So first, just observe the breath, yeah, for yourself, either at the level of your nostrils or the level of your chest, or a combination of those two. Yeah, yeah, so do that for about a minute or so. Yeah, so then when the mind is a bit settled in that way, then the next point is to count the breath in order to generate concentration. Yeah, so you can count every in-breath as 1, and out-breath as 2, in-breath as 3, and then count from 1 to 10 for yourself, and then start over counting. Yeah, and then every thought that comes to mind or sound you hear and your mind drifts off, don't pay attention, just let it go and go back to the counting of the breath, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing at this time. Yeah, so let's do that counting of the breath for about a minute or so. Yeah, so then analyze the points in analytical meditation, yeah, we just discussed, meaning that the time of death is very uncertain. So what are the reasons for that? It's because you don't get a guarantee at the time of birth, right? There's no guarantee on this planet how long you're going to live. You know, it's very clear. Some people die before their parents, some people die when they're a teenager, some people die at the time of birth even, you know. So see, for nobody, there's any guarantee to have a particular amount of years, right? So see that aspect or analyze that aspect, if that's really true or not, for about half a minute or so. And see, there's not only no guarantee at the time of birth of your lifespan, but also during life, there's so many causes that can cause death rather than sustaining life, right? There's so many types of viruses or infections or diseases like cancer or heart attacks or strokes or complications in the different organs, or, you know. So see there, and then certain medications, they generally speaking help for one particular disease, but they have then side effects which cause other kind of complications or allergic reactions to certain types of food. Yeah, so see, there actually are so many causes and conditions that causes death rather than that sustaining life, right? Yeah, so analyze if that's true or not, also for about half a minute or so. And then try to see that not only is there no guarantee when you're born about your lifespan, and there are so many causes that causes death, like sicknesses or accidents, you know. But actually our body is also very fragile, you know. It's very easy to get infections, complications in the organs, and things just fail, right? Or cancer that spreads, or, you know, stroke that causes all kind of complications and infections, you know. So see that our body is actually very fragile. It's just a miracle. It's all working. When we sleep, the heart beats, lung is functioning, but it's a very complex system, right? So see that it's very easy to have complications in that system of the body. Yeah, so analyze how fragile the body actually is, or when you fall or something and there's complications, or particular sickness that involves in one organ and then everything spreads, Yeah, so see that the body is actually very fragile. Yeah, analyze if that's true for about half a minute or a minute or so. And then try to come to an overall conclusion, right? That sees that it's true. That can happen any moment. There's no guarantee when I'm born about my lifespan. There's so many causing conditions that causes death. And my body is so fragile, Yeah, so come to this conclusion that's really true. It can happen any moment, right? Yeah, there's no reason to think I'm going to live another few years, or there's no guarantee. That's true, right? There's no guarantee, Yeah, so come to that conclusion that it can happen any moment, and focus on that conclusion for about half a minute. Yeah. So then we can stop. So there's the meditations we do, they come from a scripture called the Lam Rim, or the stages of the path to enlightenment. Yeah, that's kind of a structured kind of text, how to proceed in the paths. Yeah, then one of the meditations is to contemplate death and impermanence for us to motivate ourselves, right? That's the main purpose of it. Yeah. So yeah, maybe we do a few questions, if there's questions, online or here or both or neither. Yeah.
There is one online already.
Both, yeah.
Before we go into questions, I should just mention the schedule, Geshe, while I've got everyone's attention. Lunch break will now be from 1 until 2, not 2:30, okay? So 1 hour, and then we'll finish half an hour early at the end of the day. Okay.
Yeah, so do some Q&A now and then also in the afternoon, right? Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Is it okay to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead to someone who has died who is not a Buddhist?
Yeah, you can read. That's true, but maybe more important is to do prayers for that person who died. That's I think maybe more beneficial. And then, if you're Buddhist, you can rely on a practice like Medicine Buddha, for example, or King of Prayers. Yeah, that are very good practices that can be done, right? And then the person who has died already is in the bardo. Yeah. And if you do this kind of practices, then it helps that being, or that being sometimes knows you're doing something for them, and then it creates a kind of positive attitude, and it might help them for their development in the bardo, in the intermediate state, and in the next life.
Would you consider an out-of-body experience as a kind of rehearsal for the death process?
Out-of-the-body experience is not really, by definition, similar to the death process. Yeah, it can just happen in the waking state with some people, or during a dream, or things like that. What more similar to the death process is, as we're going to talk about in the afternoon, is falling asleep. Yeah, so when you fall asleep, that's very similar to the dying process. So we're going to talk about it in the afternoon. Yeah.
And then Catherine.
Hi, thank you. It's just a bit long to type, this one. I've experienced a couple of losses of very dear beings in the last 2 or 3 years. I remember the first time I was in a Dharma center and my dad was actually about to pass, and somebody said something to me which caused me great comfort, which was, you'll meet again, you know, the close connection.
Yeah.
I've kind of in a certain way used that as a source of comfort for myself with the more recent losses, but at the same time I'm aware that it's still attachment. Unfortunately, I'm an individual very afflicted with attachment. I've come to understand through quite how badly I deal with death, that it is a big issue for me. So I'm trying to steer or ask for your guidance for a sensible middle road. Similarly, even like the last meditation you did, I was struggling with feelings of terror. So I just seem to like hit a wall of attachment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. It's good to recognize that. That's the first step, right? Some people don't even recognize this. So that's good that you already recognize it's an attachment.
My suffering has informed me.
Yeah, because it creates a kind of grasping, right? And that grasping is a problem. But don't think that you can eliminate this attachment from one day to the other, right? That needs time. Yeah, so but doing these kind of meditations and other related aspects of the training, seeing that attachment is not constructive and contentment and things like that are much more beneficial for the mind, and slowly your mind will shift, right? So also that's important to know that. But yeah, I mean, we will meet people again in next lifetime, and we have met everybody already. That's also an aspect, right? So in Buddhism, we say, since the beginning of this lifetime, we have been everything to everybody. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters. So if you think in that perspective, then you actually try to see that all beings are equal in that regard. If you see all beings are equal from that point of view, then you get less attached to some and aversion to others. Yeah, so that kind of meditation on equanimity can be very helpful in the bigger picture, you know? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Then we have, so the idea that we could die at any time can sometimes bring anxiety to my mind.
Yeah.
I understand that this is supposed to inspire us to practice, but what if we were to die before we get enough practice done for rebirth and realizations?
Yeah, I have the same worry. In one way, it's good to have not a worry that is unconstructive, but at least kind of a little bit urge, like, oh, I really have to do something. That's constructive. But thinking, oh, I won't be able to do that. Oh, that's not constructive, right? At least you start with something, and then if you die halfway through, then you make a cause to continue, right? That's very important, to at least start and keep going, and then even if you die halfway through, that continuity is there, so you might continue in the next life in a similar way, right? That's very important, to have that faith and trust that you started with something with a good motivation, and you do some prayers on the side or a wish on the side, then you move forward, and then you don't have to worry, because we won't be able to get all the realizations before we die. That's pretty obvious, right? But to understand that aspect, have the acceptance and work on it and make a prayer to continue in the next lifetime, and then that's very constructive. Then you move forward, you know? Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Okay, good. Due to reincarnation, can't we speak to the deceased? Can we speak to the deceased if they're in particular realms? As in, is it possible to
depends on
communicate?
your realizations, I suppose. If you have clairvoyance and you know, you can talk with the deceased and things like that. Okay, but you can also talk with other people around you. They also human beings and sentient beings, and they also need help, right? So, but you can do certain practices. That's very true. Especially people who are in the intermediate state, for example, or spirits, so to say. There's first the practices you can do for them. Yeah, we already talked about a few prayers you can engage in, or those who are more familiar with Buddhist practices, they can do a practice called sur, to give them some fragrance or aroma they depend upon for peaceful mind, and there are various practices that can be done, right? Yeah.
Thank you. If we understand the uncertainty of the time of death, how do we deal with wanting to do everything we want to do right now and to be realistic with what is possible?
Yeah. So I give you a threefold advice. It's a very Buddhist advice, but you can fill it in a secular way if you wish. First of all, have a big picture, great scope. For Buddhists, I'm going to achieve enlightenment, right? That's a big picture. Otherwise, you can think, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be a better human being, and I'm going to be the best human being on the planet, or something like that, to help society, right? And yeah, that's your vast vision. Then you make plans. Okay, how do I go there? Then you have to do this kind of contemplations, you have to understand the mind and its emotions, you study that a bit and you contemplate. That's your plan. So you have a vast vision. Yeah, in Buddhist perspective we say, I'm going to achieve enlightenment, even if it takes lifetimes, very determined. Yeah. Then you say, okay, I start now with the study and the practice and things like that, and meditations like that. And then, even if you die halfway through, you're on that direction, right? Yeah. So then the third advice is, don't squeeze yourself. So this advice comes from one of the disciples of Atiśa, who says, have a vast vision, fill that vast vision in the plans, make a plan for yourself. And then the third advice is to relax and don't squeeze yourself. Because if you just want to rush, you never accomplish things. It's better to, not be lazy, but to be relaxed and take your time to accomplish things, right? That's very important. Yeah.
And then, so we'll do the online ones, and then we'll start with in the Gompa in the next session.
Next session, yeah. After. Okay. Yeah, question. Yeah.
Is that Chris? I can't see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can unmute. Go ahead.
We can see you but not hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe.
Yeah.
A question about, and logically, the reason of don't worry about things you can't, can't do anything. In terms of sort of having limited capacity emotionally, there are some very, we have to say in the text, graphic descriptions of the hell realms.
Oh, is it?
That can be quite strong for the mind.
Yeah.
And strong motivation. And especially if one's sort of, then maybe contemplates, in terms of karmic retribution, maybe some sort of, indiscretions one's done in one's life.
Yeah.
I mean, just some advice, really, because it can be strong.
Yeah, it can be strong. Yeah, so that's what I said before. It's also so important to understand why is it explained in this way. That's very important to understand. And why do I meditate on it? And how do I do it? And how do I know I did it correctly? To check, right? So these kind of meditations are meant to create causes in your mind not to be born in places with a lot of suffering, right? That's the whole purpose of it. So if you see and you generate a kind of wish not to be born there, and you generate a wish that I'm going to do something to prevent it from happening, then you're on the right track. And then you move with a very courageous mind in that direction, right? So that's important that's the purpose of this. And if you think, oh yes, oh I'm not a very good meditator, and oh things are not going well, if you think like that, then it's not constructive, right? You have to see, okay, these are the possibilities, future lifetimes, I go up or go down, right? And what are the causes for going up or down? These are the causes for going down, these are the causes for going up. So I try to do my best to prevent the cause from going down and create a cause for going up. And then you just move forward. That's the constructive approach, you know? And then certain of these meditations can be very helpful in the path if you're ready for that, because it motivates you and it moves, it gives this energy, you know? Yeah, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, if you contemplate those aspects, then it gives this incredible energy to move, you know, and that should be the result of these meditations, right? And we can prevent ourselves from falling in those extremes, and we can cause ourselves to be born in the constructive places, right, to develop more. Yeah, so that's kind of the determination we need. No? Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, we stop, yeah, for lunchtime. Yeah, so dedicate, then we don't die before we before we finish dedication. Yeah, okay, so dedicate, then after lunch, so 2 o'clock, right? Yeah, we come back, yeah. So yeah, 2 o'clock, then we go over, one more meditation on what is important at the time of death, yeah, what kind of mindset is important for us, and how to help others to generate a certain kind of mindset. So we're going to talk about it after lunch. And then in the last session, we're going to talk about what happens at the process. What do you see? And what do you experience when the death starts? You know? Yeah. So let's dedicate before that, not before that happens, but yeah, before lunch. Yeah. So then think that you develop yourself in a positive way, all the time you have left, in order to become a better human being, and try to help others to become the same, right? Become better human beings, kind-hearted, or you can think bodhicitta and enlightenment and emptiness, those things like that. Yeah. Janju Semjo Rinpoche, Magye Panang Gegyochi, Gyeba Nyamba Meba Yang, Gone Gonda Bawa Sho, Toni Tawa Rinpoche, Magye Panang Gegyochi, Gyeba Nyamba Meba Yang, Gone Gonda Bawa Sho. Okay, yeah, bon appetit, and then see you soon.